The Holy Spirit's power changes life. It brings life. It gives us hope. Those hopeless people that the prophet Ezekiel was proclaiming to, in those days, the Lord took him to this valley of dry bones. They were hopeless. They were scattered throughout the Chaldean Empire, and they were dispersed. And God asked the prophet, "Can these dry bones live?" And the prophet rightly said, "You alone know, Lord." And so the Lord said, "Prophesy to those bones." And they took on flesh and breath and became alive again. All three scriptures, not only that Old Testament lesson of dry bones, but even that short lesson. Gee, Pastor Peter, did you feel cheated there? There was just a couple of verses. But anyway, Jesus pointed to the Spirit. Anyone who drinks will have the river of life flowing through them. And then in the second lesson, which is really the main focus of Pentecost, the message, the event itself, and today we focus on the verses following the actual event. You're familiar with the story of how they were gathered in one place, and all of a sudden, as they were praying, there was a mighty wind, and then tongues of fire descended on the 12 apostles, and they began to speak in other languages, so that everyone gathered in Jerusalem was able to hear them in their own native language, their heart language. It's fascinating to me. God's timing is always perfect. And the river of life that flowed through those apostles, starting with Peter and all the other apostles that were gathered there, was so evident. It was like the Holy Spirit just exploded on the scene. But today we don't experience that explosion, at least not here. Now, I have to tell you that I opened an email this morning from someone who works with the missionaries in India. And the Lutheran Church in India is exploding. Pentecost is happening there. The extremist Hindus send out a message of panic to their followers, fearing that within 50 years, India will become a Christian nation. One nation under God. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's where we were, and I don't know that we are or will be for much longer a primarily Christian nation, but it's happening in India. In China, one of the pastors in our circuit sent a note. He's been following the detaining of some of the Christian leaders in China, and they send them off to rehabilitation camps until they change to the party line once again from being followers of Jesus. And if they don't, they don't come back. And so that's happening today. Well, now we got to go back 2,000 years to that scene in Jerusalem. And God's timing, as I said, was perfect. It was Pentecost. It was, for the Jews, a celebration of the ingathering of the harvest, but in later years it became something that they celebrated God's giving of the law to Moses, and that was Pentecost. And so people, faithful followers of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, gathered in Jerusalem from all over the planet. And so they came, and though most of the faithful could somehow still follow the words of Moses and Isaiah and King David in the Psalms and the law and the prophets in Hebrew, that was not their native language. That was not their heart language. You know, and there's a difference. If you try and speak some other language that's a second language to you, it's going to be a challenge. Now, I know some of you are very gifted and you speak lots of different languages. We call you multilingual. Some of you at least speak 2 languages, and we call you bilingual. The rest of us who speak one language we call American. That's right. Well, maybe you heard about the American traveling in Madrid who couldn't speak a lick of Spanish, but wanted to order something off the menu, and he didn't read anything that he recognized, so he thought he'd like some steak and mushrooms, so he drew a picture on his napkin. He drew a picture of a cow. And then he drew a picture of a mushroom, and he handed it to the waiter. 10 minutes later, the waiter came back with an umbrella and tickets to the bullfights. So, the language barriers that we have. Deb and I traveled abroad a couple years ago. We were in Switzerland, and this fine couple from Bern, Switzerland, we were on this train, and they said, oh, American? And their English was very broken. And so I tried. I got the 24 CD set of German CDs from Costco, so I had practiced my German, and I tried a little German. And he said, oh, Steve, your German is terrible. Terrible. I can't do that. So I'm very sympathetic about people from other languages. I heard about this international student who was trying to speak English to his English friend, English-only speaking American friend here in the States. And his wife had been recovering from serious illness. And so he tried in his best English to say how she was doing. And he said this: "She is not as painful as she was, but she is still very tiresome." Yeah, it's a funny language, isn't it?